Hello everybody, this is my One Tao Kung Fu Academy teacher's course Seeing Qi video essay submission, and I hope you will enjoy it. Seeing Qi as visual energy has fascinated martial artists and observers for generations. Stories of masters perceiving glowing fields or projecting visible force are compelling, but they often blur the line between metaphor and measurable reality. In the context of Wing Chun and martial arts more broadly, seeing Qi is best understood not as literal light radiating from the body, but as a refined way of perceiving movement, intention, and connection so clearly that it feels almost visual. There's the temptation of literal interpretation of seeing Qi, and it's worth addressing this directly. Most claims of physically visible Qi, glows, auras, beams when aliens kidnap us, do not hold up under careful scrutiny. Wing Chun, especially as taught by our great Grandmaster Ip Man, is a highly pragmatic system. Its effectiveness comes from structure, timing, and sensitivity. So it's not a supernatural display. However, dismissing the idea entirely would miss something important. When practitioners speak of seeing Qi, they are often describing a genuine shift in perception, one that becomes possible through training. From feeling to seeing, there is a way. Wing Chun develops sensitivity primarily through touch, especially in Chi Sao. Over time, the practitioner becomes highly attuned to subtle changes in pressure, direction of force, and intent before movement fully manifests. At advanced level, tactile awareness begins to extend into visual perception, and movements are read earlier, almost before they happen. The practitioner no longer reacts to strikes, they perceive the conditions that produce the strike. This is where the language of seeing Qi emerges. It's not that energy becomes visible, but patterns become so clear, they appear almost as if highlighted in space. Our great Grandmaster, Chushong Tin, who was very big on internal clarity, or very high on internal clarity, described Wing Chun in terms of internal connection and Nim link, mind force or mind power. As we developed terminology in last few decades, including the works of Dr. David Hawkins and his map of consciousness, where the power is life-supporting energy calibrated at 200 and above, and force is life-suppressing energy calibrated below 200. You can get a closer look in the works of Dr. David Hawkins in his books. There are many of them speaking about this division on the map of consciousness, and one of these books is Power versus Force. You can look it up there. So, mind force or mind power. When we use the term force, meaning it in a good way, then we mean the force from Star Wars, midi-chlorian force. All the rest of good energy we connect to power. So let's get back to seeing energy and Chushong Tin. So when the body is unified and the mind is calm, perception sharpens. In such state, one can sense alignment of oneself and others. One can detect tension instantly, and one perceives where the force is rooted and where it is empty. This clarity can feel like seeing energy, because the practitioner is no longer distracted by surface movement. Instead, they perceive underlying structure and intention directly. Bruce Lee addressed seeing chi or seeing energy as awareness without illusion. Bruce Lee pushed strongly against mystical interpretation, yet his level of perception was extraordinary. He spoke of being aware of what is and acting without delay. There was great influence by Jiddu Krishnamurti on Bruce Lee's philosophical and proto-philosophical insights as he read his works when he was recovering from back injury and wasn't able to train for 6 or more months. And he developed his awareness, his insights on the consciousness, on the mind, even more with Krishnamurti. So in practical terms, Li's awareness allowed him to read opponents instantly, anticipate movement without guessing, and flow without hesitation. If one were to describe this poetically, it might sound like seeing energy flow. But Li himself would likely insist that it is simply a clear perception, free of all the mental clutter. From a modern perspective, seeing Qi can be understood as advanced pattern recognition. The brain, trained through repetition, begins to predict motion from minimal cues, recognize imbalance before it becomes obvious, and integrate visual and tactile information seamlessly. For example, a slight shift in weight, a tightening of the shoulder, or a change in breathing can signal intention, can signal that opponent is about to do something physical. To an untrained eye, these are invisible, these subtle changes. But to a trained practitioner, with trained brain, trained eye, these signals as slight shift in weight, tightening of the shoulder, change in breathing, etc., they stand out vividly. This heightened perception can almost feel like sixth sense, but it's actually very highly developed characteristics, grounded in experience, which provided stimulus for adaptation. And quantitative development of this adaptation almost trespasses the borders of qualitative characteristic, becoming almost not just very good aggregate of visual stimulus, but rather a sixth sense. A key factor in this process is relaxation and stillness, letting go of unnecessary tension. When the body is tight, perception narrows. When the mind is busy, signals are missed. Practices inherited from traditions like the Shaolin Monastery, where the Wing Chun initially came from, emphasize stillness and awareness. Through meditation and slow forms, practitioners learn to quiet internal noise. As this happens, vision becomes softer yet more inclusive. attention widens and subtle details become noticeable. In this state, movement can appear almost slow down and interactions become easier to read. This is often described as seeing energy, though it is really seeing clearly. There's also a great danger of misinterpretation. While the idea of visual qi can inspire, it can also mislead. Chasing internal visions or supernatural experiences can distract from the core of martial training. Wing Chun's strength lies in efficiency, directness, and real-world applicability. If seeing qi does not improve timing, structure, or responsiveness, it is likely a distraction rather than a skill. A practical or grounded way to understand seeing qi is something like this. Seeing structure by recognizing alignment and imbalance instantly. Seeing intention, as in reading what opponent is about to do, and seeing the opportunity by identifying openings without conscious thought. So seeing structure, seeing intention, and seeing opportunity, all mixed up in our sixth sense. These are not mystical abilities, they are trainable skills. Yet, when developed deeply, they can really feel extraordinary. As I said, a shift in quantity, a big shift in quantity can lead up to shift in quality as emerging or newly born quality. So not just enhancing the existing senses like visual and other 4 sensoric areas, but developing, as I previously said, something so sophisticated, so different that it almost becomes a new quality, new sense. To conclude today's topic, to see qi in Wing Chun is not to witness glowing energy fields, as in Matrix, when Neo opens up his mind, but to perceive reality with unusual clarity. Through relaxation, repetition, and sensitivity training, the practitioner begins to see patterns that were previously hidden. Masters like Ip Man emphasized simplicity and directness. Chu Shong Tin, the king of Sionin Tao, revealed the internal processes behind that simplicity. Bruce Lee stripped away illusion to focus on pure awareness. And together, these teachings embodied and manifested in the teachings of Sifu John Kogan as well, suggest that the highest level of skill is not supernatural, it is very, very natural, but refined. In this refinement, perception becomes so clear that what was once invisible becomes obvious. And in that sense, one might say, not literally, but meaningfully, that Qi really becomes visible. Thank you for your time. Peace, love, and Kung Fu.